The Primitive Newcomers. The Kthar Grand Council Chamber, an immense void carved from a lifeless moonlet of hardened crystalline lava, served as a deliberate reminder of the galaxy's vast cold power and the smallness of those who dared to petition it. The very acoustics were designed to humble, amplifying the natural clicks and rumbles of the dominant species. The air was thick with the high-pressure, high-humidity requirements of the krill and filled with the constant grating rustle of their chitinous scales against polished chrome. Before the dais stood Ambassador Lena Rostova of the Unified Terran Commonwealth, a figure of plain organic vulnerability, her simple gray tunic a stark contrast to the Vorn Collective's elaborate bio-integrated armor and life support systems, which glowed with unnecessary prestige. The krill praetor, Veshk, a massive, six-limbed creature supported by a lattice of humming electromechanical prosthetics, shifted his bulk forward until his segmented shadow completely eclipsed the Terran delegate. His voice, electronically amplified and layered with synthesized contempt, boomed through the chamber, echoing off the obsidian walls. The Terran application for Tier 3 status is once again tabled. A species that required a full century just to stabilize their lunar colonies, a mere lunar sphere, and whose greatest achievement is merely surviving their own historical follies, is simply not fit for the governance of stars. You are primitive newcomers, Ambassador. Your system's aggregate economic output barely registers against a krill regional sector's mining subsidiary. Go back to your mudball and sort out your ceaseless internal squabbles before daring to speak of cosmic law or interstellar treaties. We will reassess your maturity in 5 cycles. Do not waste our time again. Whispers of the Sundering. Ambassador Rostova accepted the dismissal with a chilling, almost unnerving lack of emotion. Her hands remained clasped loosely behind her back, her posture a masterpiece of non-confrontational, cold compliance that bordered on institutionalized defeatism. This lack of visible resentment did not soothe the krill, it amplified their contempt, confirming their view of humanity as weak and defeatist. Yet as she turned to leave, a wave of profound cold unease rippled through the older delegations. Species like the cryptic Xylos, known for their deep temporal archives, and the ancient Cygnian hegemony, whose verified histories stretched back 10 millennia. They remembered the Great Silence, the terrifying epoch when the Sol system vanished completely from all stellar charts, not through natural catastrophe or swift conquest, but through a deliberate, inexplicable act of self-imposed quarantine. Whispers, barely audible above the cooling fans of the alien systems, spread like a sudden draft of cold air. Rumors of Earth's forgotten, self-inflicted wounds, of the ancient terrible conflicts known in their secret histories as the Wars of Nullification, where success was measured not in fleet losses, but in constants broken, localized zones where the strong nuclear force itself briefly failed, or gravity reversed. A race that once burned itself down to the bedrock and survived, then erased the memory and built a civilization on the foundations of profound fear, the ancient Xylos delegates signaled to each other. They may still hold the match and know exactly what cosmic laws not to strike. The Deep Driller's Gift. Far past the orbital markers of Neptune, deep in the frozen dark expanse of the Kuiper Belt, where temperatures rarely rose above 10 Kelvin, the automated heavy element mining rig, Deep Driller 7, struck something that registered as an impossible void on its passive sensors. It was not ice, rock, or typical space debris, but a perfect, crystalline sphere of dull, featureless material, later classified as chrono-obsidian. The exterior surface was perfectly smooth, absorbing all incident light, making the massive sphere appear as a piece of solidified shadow. Chief Engineer Marcus Vance, running the diagnostics from the orbital station New Shanghai, through his antiquated console impossible readings, a calculated density greater than any theorized neutronium alloy, and a molecular lattice structure that defied all terrestrial classification. It was perfectly stable, even at 5 Kelvin. It wasn't just old, it was built to survive geological epochs of pressure and radiation, sitting in the celestial debris field like a deliberate, titanic seed. It was an artifact, a vast segmented hemisphere that had been deliberately, meticulously buried beneath a mantle of exotic dampening metals, a silent cold tomb built from a metal that current human science couldn't even theorize, let alone forge. Vance's log entry was brief and laced with dread. "We have found the door to a house we were told never existed, and I fear the occupant is still inside." Project Kronos initiated. The discovery triggered emergency protocols hidden deep within the Commonwealth defense architecture. A contingency system coded as apostasy that had been dormant and untested for centuries. The find was immediately classified under Project Kronos, an initiative so deep even the Council ambassador wasn't privy to the details. There was no broadcast, no official report, and no public notice. Just the silent, abrupt diversion of the single heavily shielded long-haul vessel, the Stardust Retribution, modified with bleeding-edge stealth coatings and crewed by a skeleton military of specialists sworn to the Commonwealth's founding oath. Under absolute, silent military escort, the artifact was carefully extracted, encased in non-reactive zero-point containment fields to neutralize any ambient radiation, and towed back toward Sol. It bypassed all modern facilities, descending through Earth's atmosphere to the coordinates of Facility Gobi 7, a deeply buried research bunker beneath the Gobi Desert, a relic and a scar from the very wars the Galactic Council dismissed as follies. The facility, built 3.2 kilometers beneath the surface, was designed not just to withstand planetary sterilization, but to survive the temporary dissolution of the ionosphere. Beyond current science. For 8 harrowing months, Dr. Eris Forn, a brilliant but eccentric quantum physicist with a fascination for pre-Commonwealth history, and his hand-picked team of xenolinguists and forgotten tech specialists lived in absolute subterranean silence, sealed away from the surface world. Their challenge was unprecedented: understanding the relic. Its internal mechanisms were not driven by electricity, magnetism, or even the quantum entanglement theory that powered modern human drives. They functioned entirely using space-time folding, a method of leveraging localized miniature gravitational collapse for instantaneous energy generation and displacement, effectively drawing usable power from the absence of space itself. Thorne realized with chilling certainty that the complex, multi-layered language etched onto the inner walls, though visually human, utilized a syntax that combined mathematical constants with ancient lost Terran dialects, predating the Commonwealth by at least 2 millennia. He confirmed his theory by cross-referencing ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, and Proto-Indo-European myths of impossible machinery, realizing the myths were mere technical descriptions. "This isn't merely forgotten technology," he wrote in his journal, his hand shaking with the weight of history. "This is technology from a civilization that fundamentally evolved past the physical laws we currently accept as absolute. We are children reading the instruction manual for a God's toolkit, and it remembers all our mistakes, right down to the last constant broken." The Ancients of Terra. Driven by the artifact's alien yet human language, Dr. Thorne initiated the forbidden Deep Archive search protocols, breaching layers of historical censorship deliberately placed by the Commonwealth's founders to protect their descendants. The truth was revealed in fragmented, terrifying records and ghost code. Before the current Commonwealth, there were the Ancients of Terra, and they were not weak. They didn't just reach the stars, they rearranged the stars, building Dyson swarms that harnessed solar power in unimaginable amounts, and sustaining entire pocket universes for resource extraction and experimentation. Their mastery over fundamental forces was total, but this absolute power inevitably led to the War of the Constants, a conflict fought not with guided missiles or fusion bombs, but with reality itself, using weapons that could temporarily alter the gravitational constant, the speed of light, and the strong nuclear force in localized zones, making stars wink out or planetary orbits instantly decay. The final casualty estimate was simple and terrifying. The survivors realized one more exchange, one final push, and the entire Sol system, space, time, and matter would simply cease to exist in a unified field collapse, reverting to a state of pure quantum potential. The silent burden. The last collective act of the ancients was not of renewed defiance, but of ultimate, profound, fearful surrender. They didn't destroy the ultimate weapon. They knew, chillingly, it was functionally impossible to unmake, as its core mechanics were based on harnessing foundational, self-sustaining physics. Instead, they performed the greatest act of self-quarantine in history. They built the massive containment field using mountains of chrono-obsidian, buried the core deep beneath the celestial debris of the Kuiper Belt, and then erased all operational knowledge, rewriting their history as a long, dark fall from grace. They accepted fragility, peace, and subsequent galactic ridicule as the necessary price for species survival, a silent oath sworn to never again tempt the void. The weapon, the Aether Engine, was sealed in silence, a cosmic failsafe buried by those who understood its terrible, undeniable necessity and the profound moral burden of its existence. They called it, in the old language, the penance, a monument to their collective sin, meant to sleep until the end of time. Galactic laughter. In the bustling trade hubs of the Krill sector, from the massive orbital station of Kaz-Tal to the raw asteroid markets of the Vorn, the vague, circulating rumors of the Terran excavation were met with outright derision and financial opportunism. They're digging up old iron and ceremonial trinkets, trying to find dignity, chirped a Vorn trader on a public channel, amplifying his statement to attract crowds. The humans are a neurotic race, clinging to mythical golden ages to compensate for their current weakness and agonizingly slow economic output. Buy their debt now before they default and we seize their orbital assets. The Krill praetor Veshk himself publicly referenced the Terran fairy tales of reality-breaking machines in a major address, calling it definitive proof of humanity's juvenile delusion and genetic instability. The galaxy was absolutely certain of one thing: humanity was too timid, too small, too rational, and critically too fractured to ever pose a meaningful threat, let alone harbor a weapon of significance. Their confidence bordered on bored, profitable indifference, a deeply ingrained complacency that would soon become their undoing. Rebuilding the failsafe. Beneath the Gobi, the work shifted from silent analysis to brutal, high-stakes reconstruction. Using the incomprehensible relic as a perfect, scaled blueprint, and powered by immense, regulated energy drawn from the deep Earth's core via geothermal taps, the scientists began forging components based on reverse-engineered impossibility. They utilized techniques like inverse phase forging, creating materials under negative pressure, and entropic stabilization to create alloys that bent light and energy in ways previously only found in theoretical, untestable equations. The goal was to reconstruct the full Aether engine and integrate its power core into a single, mobile, fully shielded platform capable of independent interstellar operation. The final machine took shape in an abandoned pressurized orbital facility near Jupiter, a massive, angular, cyclopean hull 3 kilometers long, devoid of conventional lasers, missiles, or defensive turrets. It looked less like a warship and more like a dark, angular cathedral dedicated to absolute, profound silence, its surface absorbing all electromagnetic radiation. The first activation. The command, carried by a secure quantum key that bypassed all known encryption methods, was given by the shadowy Commonwealth Council of Elders, the direct descendants of the ancients who swore the oath. In the cold void far past Pluto's orbit, the Aether engine was cycled to its lowest, purely diagnostic power setting, less than 0.001% of its estimated full capacity. There was no explosion, no flash of fusion light, no telltale magnetic flux. Only a subtle, momentary, yet infinite drain on the local energy density of surrounding space, like a vacuum cleaner removing reality itself. 3,000 light-years away, precisely where a high-value automated Krill deep space monitoring post on the fringes of the Orion Arm was positioned, the sensors recorded a sudden, non-localized entropy spike. A perfect, momentary collapse of local space-time geometry that instantly left a 1-kilometer sphere of absolute zero-point vacuum. The effect faded within a second, leaving no residual radiation, no heat, no debris, and no physical evidence that the station had ever existed. It was simply gone. The Krill panic. Krill High Command was galvanized, not by anger or a desire for retaliation, but by a chilling, paralyzing terror that bypassed the primal fear of death and went straight for existential dread. Their best theoretical physicists, working round the clock, could not replicate or even explain the effect. They had no frame of reference for the weapon's operation. A single frantic report was transmitted across their most secure encoded channels. The station was not damaged, it was unmade. The energy signature decay is non-existent. It is a temporal impossibility. It didn't burn, it didn't fragment, it erased the target data from reality's ledger. Praetor Veshk, witnessing the report, felt his voice of galactic arrogance now shattered, his segmented body shaking with uncontrollable tremors. He was forced to confront the cold, horrifying fact that the fundamental rules of the cosmos they relied upon had just been casually disregarded by the primitive newcomers. This wasn't a new weapon, it was an act of physics defiance that threatened the very structure of their reality, revealing their laws to be mere regional suggestions. The Ghost Fleet. Using the refined knowledge from Project Kronos, the human Commonwealth quietly upgraded their existing, previously inadequate, fleet structure, focusing on mobility and stealth. Their slow, conventional, fusion flare warp drives were replaced with smaller, localized space-time folders. These new drives didn't traverse space by bending it or accelerating through it, they skipped it, utilizing brief, silent, dimensional jumps that left no exhaust trail or heat signature, appearing and disappearing at will across vast distances. Human reconnaissance vessels, previously the slowest and most detectable in the known galaxy, began arriving at distant, contested points instantaneously and silently, appearing like cold, dark ghosts of warships. They no longer carried the clumsy, multi-stage ballistic missiles of the newcomers. They carried sleek, dark devices, fueled by the harnessed silence of the ancients. Compact reality manipulators capable of localized phase transitions, the miniature cousins of the Aether engine itself. The demand for surrender. The Krill Empire, masking their profound, stomach-churning panic with layers of imperial bravado and sheer volume, dispatched a full-spectrum, non-negotiable ultimatum. A colossal holographic projection of Praetor Veshk, his face strained and pallid, scaled to eclipse the moon in Earth's orbital defense network, materialized over the planet. His voice, though synthesized, contained visible tremors of fear. Terrans, you have unlawfully possessed and activated a technology that destabilizes the delicate, sacred balance of the cosmos. This power is too great, too dangerous for a reckless young species with a proven history of self-harm. Surrender the device, its schematics, its operators, and all related research to the Krill Authority within 12 standard hours, or face total, irreversible annihilation. We will sterilize Sol, reducing your system to plasma and dust, and accept the political fallout before allowing this existential contagion to spread throughout the core worlds. The final silence. Ambassador Rostova was not sent to deliver the reply. She remained on Earth, monitoring the Krill's frantic, transparent preparations for war, their fleet movements betraying desperation, not strategic calculation. Instead, a single, complexly encrypted message was broadcast back on the Open Krill military channel, using a modulation frequency that carried an impossible weight of authority. a frequency last used during the chaotic climax of the War of the Constants. The message was audio only, delivered in a clear, measured human voice that sounded ancient, tired, but absolutely firm. A voice that carried the weight of ages. It was just one chilling sentence, devoid of emotional inflection or threat, simply stating a reality. We refuse your demand. We are no longer children. We are the unwilling custodians of the ultimate silence. You cannot demand surrender from one who holds the key to the void. The Krill ultimatum timer instantly vanished from human displays, replaced by dead silence across all interstellar channels. The time for diplomacy, for threats, and for submission was over. The only sound left was the quiet rhythmic hum of preparing engines across the Sol system, now ready for war. The Aegis of Sol. The Battle of Kepler 186f was intended by the Krill to be a swift, brutal massacre, a massive show of conventional force designed to restore their shattered prestige. A Krill armada comprising 20 heavily armed dreadnoughts and hundreds of auxiliary vessels, arranged in their vaunted Iron Fist maneuver, cornered a tiny, desperate human defense force. As the Krill opened fire with torrents of superheated plasma cannons, the human ships executed an impossible simultaneous dimensional fold, blinking out of existence in unison. Into the void they had left, a monstrous geometric shadow emerged. It was the mobile platform, the reconstructed core of the Aether engine, now christened the Aegis of Sol. It was devoid of paint, lights, or conventional shielding. It simply existed as an angular, terrifying 3-kilometer monument to a forgotten, terrible age, a dimensional anchor of cold shadow. It absorbed all sensor light and gravitational readings, becoming the perfect, silent absence of light itself. The crumbling. The Krill fleet hesitated for exactly 3.7 seconds, a tactical failure born of sheer incomprehension, a gap between sensor reading and psychological processing of the impossible. It was enough. The Aegis did not fire focused energy beams or kinetic projectiles. It simply activated the Aether engine's core to a moderate power output, focused through its prow. A visible, perfectly circular ripple of pure dark energy, like a flaw propagating in the fabric of space-time, expanded rapidly from its prow at near infinite velocity. When the wave touched the Krill lead dreadnought, the 3-kilometer-long vessel didn't explode, burn, or fragment. Its existence was instantaneously annulled. The space it occupied was replaced by a shimmering, perfect sphere of non-existence, a flaw in the star field that closed a millisecond later with a silence louder than any explosion. What remained was only cold, scattered molecules, and a deep, soul-crushing cosmic dread in the minds of the surviving Krill captains. Their formations instantly broke, their tactical structure dissolving into a panicked every-ship-for-itself retreat towards the nearest jump point, leaving their command vessel annihilated. The Remembrance. The Krill formations broke and scattered across the sector, their communications filled with static panic and the high-pitched shriek of their species' primal terror response. On the bridge of the Aegis of Sol, Captain Elias Vane, the former historian who now commanded the ultimate weapon, transmitted a message on all galactic frequencies. He bypassed all krill jamming and language filters, sending the raw, undeniable emotion of his words, which carried the weight of history and regret. For centuries we endured your contempt. We were called fragile, primitive, and meek. We forgot our own history, deliberately, to ensure our species' continued existence. You demanded we surrender our one guarantee of safety, the memory of our greatest mistake. The galaxy allowed us to remember the truth of our past. We chose to forget our strength for the cosmos' sake. But now, because of your arrogance and threats, we remember it. This weapon is the sound of our deepest memory, and its purpose is simple: survival, even if that means using the darkness we buried. You have forced us to choose the dark past over the difficult peace. Council of Fear. The chaos was absolute and immediate. Species that had been silent, superior observers for centuries now clamored for emergency peace talks, their leaders openly trembling and issuing desperate requests for Terran protection against the very krill they had once supported. The krill praetor Veshk was nowhere to be found, having reportedly suffered a psychological break upon viewing the battle recording, muttering only the word "annulled." His successor was issuing desperate, contradictory orders for total strategic retreat and immediate diplomatic contact. The economic fallout was swift and total. Trade routes collapsed, commodity prices spiked, and the value of krill currency plummeted to zero across every major exchange. The power disparity was not merely technological, it was existential. Humanity had leapfrogged from a struggling Tier 2 species to the dominant, terror-inducing entity in a single afternoon, using one silent, terrifying machine and correcting the entire galactic political order. The burden of mercy. The galaxy's greatest academic and military minds began to analyze the historical records the ancients had so painstakingly obscured, records now freely provided by the Terran Commonwealth, who had nothing left to hide but their intentions. They realized the chilling truth: humanity had not hidden this power because they couldn't wield it, but because they understood the profound moral and cosmic weight of its use. Their current peaceful commonwealth was revealed to be the greatest act of restraint in galactic history, a deliberate, fragile structure built to quarantine the self-destructive genius of the ancients and their capacity for absolute destruction. They hadn't been weak, they had been holding the leash on a universe-destroying force, accepting centuries of ridicule as the price of cosmic security. The Terran fragility, the poverty, and the slowness the krill had mocked were, in fact, an act of supreme, selfless cosmic responsibility to the entire galactic order, a necessary lie for the preservation of all life. The final warning. Humanity did not press their massive, undeniable military advantage. The Aegis of Sol, its terrible function performed and its warning delivered, executed a massive dimensional jump and returned to the deep shadows of the Oort cloud, its location undisclosed, its existence a permanent shadow on the stars and a check on galactic arrogance. Ambassador Rostova, her expression now stern and unyielding, stepped back into the silent council chamber, where the few remaining delegates watched her with a mixture of desperate awe and raw terror. She did not seek new status or demand retribution or claim territory. She simply initiated one final galaxy-wide broadcast, her voice perfectly calm, resonating with impossible authority into the silence of 10,000 star systems. We showed you mercy and deliberately chose peace over dominion for 300 years. Our restraint was born of wisdom, not fear. We knew what we were capable of. You did not, and you forced our hand. Never mistake our mercy, our long, silent struggle for balance, for weakness again. The penance remains as our guardian, and now you too know its purpose. The Terran Gilladation withdrew, leaving the stunned, humbled council to contemplate a newly corrected, vastly more dangerous galaxy, forever haunted by the memory of the silence of soul.